Hello, adventurers, and welcome to the Academy of Adventurers' first ever podcast. And we have a guest, which is such an honor for me because I would have never thought in a million years that my first podcast would actually include a man of this caliber. Well, let me go ahead and introduce him. So today's guest is Michael Haddad. And Michael Haddad has quite the interesting biography. So, well, first and foremost, he's an Army veteran. So a salute to his service. And he's currently working by providing legal assistance to veterans in the state of Illinois. So he's actually in Chicago. And after his military service, he decided to go ahead and earn his bachelor's degree in religious studies from St. Joseph College in Northwestern Indiana. And then he got his master's in systematic theology from Catholic Theological Union, which I'm so fascinated by that. I got to ask you more about that during the podcast, systematic theology. Then he went ahead and he started teaching theology at Notre Dame College Prep Academy. He's been teaching for over 10 years, and then he decided to go ahead and serve as an adjunct professor of religious studies at St. Xavier University. In 2016, Michael returned to being a student at Southern Illinois University School of Law, and then he graduated in May of 2020. That was during the pandemic. Awesome for doing that. And as his hobbies, Michael enjoys traveling and spending time with his niece and nephews. So, wow, what a great biography. We're so glad to have you, Michael.
I'm so tired, all that studying all the time, just I could finally get some rest now,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk today about the importance of leisure and recreation in our lives. So we have four pillars here at the Academy for Adventure. So we've got adventure, we've got battle, we've got growth, and then we've got beauty. And a lot of times when people think about adventure, it's like this huge, tiring, cumbersome, gruesome, long event where you go on this adventure and you encounter obstacles along the way and you kind of have your battles. And you grow along the way, you get to experience some form of natural beauty along the way. So we tend to think of adventure as these grand, explorations. But I'm also reminded of something very interesting. And we see this, for example, we see this in Harry Potter. We see this in The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, where the adventure isn't just battle. It's not like in The Hobbit, for example, Bilbo didn't spend all 400 pages fighting Smaug, the dragon. He fought the dragon at the end. But there were moments where he rested and he was welcomed in the town of Riverton and he was welcomed by the elves. And then Harry Potter has these nice moments where he spends time with his friends and he enjoys Christmas and he enjoys these moments of leisure. And so adventure isn't just about that. Adventure is also about leisure. So I guess the first question is, what to you makes leisure so important and why is it that you're so passionate about it?
I mean, for leisure, what we have is it's an inward calm, it's silence, it's letting things happen. And you are given examples of this in our adventure, the time of Christmas and so on. Leisure is becoming more and more important in our life, and it has to be a conversation because without leisure, we become either a society or we become a person or we become a group of people that work is the end all be all. And the problem with that is it sounds good, be productive, work hard, keep working, push the limits, break the ceiling. But as a human being, we're not letting things happen anymore, or we're not sitting in that silence. And when you lose that, you don't have peace anymore. We become burned out, we become angry, we take it out on family members.
Yeah.
And in that life, we have to remember leisure, and that way we can rejuvenate ourselves, because we're not going to fight a battle every single day. We can't. We're human.
Yeah. And I struggle with that because a lot of what we talk about, on this new channel is precisely what you just said. It's capturing productivity, and it's capturing these moments where, let me do 10% extra, let me surpass my limit, let me go ahead and see how can I stretch myself to expand, because it's necessary. Otherwise we just stay stagnant. But I found myself on the other end of the candle, like you said, burnt out. And then I become, like you said, resentful. And even though I'm so passionate about my work, I find myself thinking, you know what, like I don't even want to do it today.
Yeah.
And so there are these hidden enemies that creep up, kind of like, we kind of think of like Satan, right? Or the snake in the Garden of Eden, where, the snake came, to Eve with this message of like, this good message of like, hey, like this knowledge is good for you. And it's like, God is like hiding this away because he doesn't want you to be like him. But it's like productivity is kind of like that too. It's like sometimes it can mask itself in a good thing. It's like, yeah, you're being more productive. But then if you fall to the temptation of always doing that, you lose that leisure. And I think that's a very dangerous game to play.
Yeah, I think it was, these are going to be my own words, but from reading St. Thomas Aquinas, if we don't know how to leisure, we don't know how to work. If we don't know how to leisure, we're missing out on the purpose of life. And I always try to make that joke. No one said I had a great, some sort of moving experience, or my life changed when I was paying my bills or going to work or doing something we have to work for. But what shapes our life is that time of leisure, right? Celebrations, family get-togethers, watching a movie that, stimulates the mind, nature.
Right. Absolutely. So how can we become purposeful with that? Because what I've noticed is, the other night when we had you present speaking on Theology on Tap, and when we talked about this topic, I've noticed that, like you said, there is that lesson. Like we actually become better at working when we have those leisures. So how can I as an individual, right? How can I as an individual become more aware of that? Like, and how can I form the connection between leisure and actually extrapolate those ideas and apply them?
Yeah, I think that applies to each individual person differently, but I'll give a blanket answer, if you will. Leisure, is that time that we have. And a lot of times in our mentality nowadays, or at least in Western culture, is leisure is work hard for the week and then I can watch my Netflix, or I could just sit on the couch or, scroll through social media all the time. But what I'm here, when I give this talk, or when I talk about leisure, I say we have to be intentional and getting deeper in what true leisure is. So I kind of think of, I'm going to mention St. Thomas Aquinas here, so I keep sounding smart. I have no clue what he's saying, but I'm going to sound smart now.
We got to make sure that your systematic theology degree is put to work.
That's right. Those student loans, they got to mean something, so I'll mention them. Yeah. But, he had, in his biography, he wrote something like, I was in, when he was sitting in the pub having a beer, when the conversation turned away from God, he would leave. Yeah, and because he wanted that stimulation, he didn't want to talk about things that were just plain and simple, or maybe that's a bad choice of words. Something that's not going to stimulate his mind.
It's like not transcendent almost. It's purely, I guess it's purely in the purely actual realm, physical realm, and it doesn't really touch upon like universal morality or something that can really stimulate the mind.
Right. Or something, he would classify as, whatever is beautiful, what is true, yeah, beautiful and true. We have to throw that in there when we talk about St. Thomas. So he
Absolutely.
liked to examine those. So, we have to be intentional to finally get to your answers. We have to be intentional. Am I working correctly? And at the same time, in my leisure time, what am I doing that's stimulating the mind?
Right.
You know, Netflix is good, naps are good, uh, but we can't do that all day. That's not stimulating our minds. It's not recreating us. So we get that word recreation or recreation.
Ah, that's a very good insight there.
Yeah.
You see, I'm very big on words, and I love language and etymology. And that was something that I'm so happy you pointed that out, because I never made that connection. It's like recreation is the recreating. It's
Yeah.
that's phenomenal. I
And
mean,
like
what a simple but powerful insight there to that word.
and like I was saying before, you know, leisure is the purpose of life. That's when our life changes. We are created new, in those times. Paying the bill, like I said, standing in the water bill line, it's not making Michael Haddad a new person, you know. But spending time with my niece and nephew does,
Yeah,
spending time I enjoy going to mass, and spending time at mass, or in prayer, or in silence, or in nature, that recreates me.
absolutely. Absolutely. So there's you're touching upon very very deep and beautiful philosophical topics there. So one of the things that I like to talk about is bridging the gap sometimes between those two things, because I know that not everybody in the audience is going to have the same religious background, and that's
Right.
totally fine. But at the same time, there needs to be this element of transcendence, because it's not just about you, it's not just about me. Like we're meant to share, in this reality together. And what binds us are these laws of truth and beauty, and sharing the experiences with other people. So what what have you found is a great way to kind of bridge the gap between spiritual or mental growth and leisure? Like what's one maybe insight you've had? Like, would you be able to give an example of maybe, like, what, like, I had this breakthrough because I rested?
I mean, I have to say that is a constant thing.
Mm.
For me, I share the story, and I know we're all from different backgrounds, but I've heard some talk of leisure before, but it never really bloomed in my heart and mind, if you will. But I talk about one time being at a prayer service,
Mm.
and in that prayer service, I just had this feeling of, here I am, and I felt peaceful. Here I am in that peace, and I was just downtown Chicago, where the church was, and the hustle and bustle of the city. And just for that moment, I kind of grew, of, hey, I need to relax. The deadlines are going to be there. I'm going to kill myself if I don't. Or I'm sorry. If I keep working, I'm going to put myself into an early grave,
Yeah.
things like that. And I just had that calm of, you know, I'm, I'm being recreated right now. And we see a lot of people will have this experience when they go in nature.
Yeah.
Nature is good. It
Yes.
is beautiful. And I don't care who you are,
Right.
you feel good afterwards.
Why do you think that is? Because the nature conversation is one that I'm always so interested in, because it seems to be, you know, this universal element
Yeah.
that, you know, everyone seems to understand that there is an importance to nature, and there is something that is just inherently beautiful about it.
I think we see nature uh, almost as a form of leisure.
Mm.
It's doing what it's supposed to do. It's beautiful. Remember that definition I gave is that leisure is letting things happen. And that's really what nature's doing. So when we observe that, we're observing beauty, we're observing silence, opportunity to think, and we're far away from that work.
Yeah. I find that so beautiful because it's just the simple understanding or the recognition of just letting it be what it is.
Mhm.
Like you go into nature and you're just observing what is. Like
Mhm.
if I look outside my window and I stare at a tree, if I stare at it long enough, I start to notice the leaves and the different branches, and maybe there's a breeze that's passing by, or maybe there's a squirrel that just scurries along. And it's
Right.
just the pure admiration of just observing things in their natural state, which
Mhm.
nature and natural is the same root. But I there's something to that, and I don't know exactly what it is. Maybe it's just letting the natural state of things and the peace just kind of just observe it.
Right. It's contagious. I think we pick up on that. And we ourselves, I talk about that prayer service where I became, calm or peaceful. And I think in nature, we all are connected in that way, where we see all of that and we become co-creators in that, if you will.
Yes. I love that because the book of Genesis talks about that we were created in the image and likeness of God, right?
Mhm.
And what I love about that is it naturally means that if God is a creator and I was created in his image and likeness, therefore I am too.
Mhm.
So I am also a creator, obviously to a lesser degree,
Right,
but
right,
I
right.
am also capable of creating something. And I think that I wanted to talk a little bit about that in creation and then recreation, right? So it's kind of like, you know, we when we work, we create, right? We produce. So, the first thing that Adam did was name all the animals, right? I mean, that was
Mhm.
like literally just like God put him to work, and then, the snake came in, did his thing, they both fell, and then, God all of a sudden establishes this more, I guess, more strenuous labor, where
Mhm.
now you've got to toil for the rest of your days, and then the woman was punished with childbirthing pain and all
Mhm.
that anguish, and then the serpent would strike at her heel, and then she would strike down on him. So it's
Mhm.
like, so now it's like, now we're here, right? So now we're stuck,
Right.
and now work is still good inherently speaking, but now it has been warped, because I don't think we were created to live behind computer screens and spend 10 hours of our life behind the screen, or for that matter, scrolling on social. I don't think that's what we're here for, you
Right.
know
Yeah, I mean, originally, like you said, Adam working in the fields or in the garden, we are co-creators with God. That was our destiny. But, if I could take it one step further, we notice too when Jesus comes along that there is a recreation as well. And, those that know the story in Christianity, as we have the resurrection.
yes.
And it's kind of important too, whether people know this or not, we'll kind of get into it, I guess. Jesus did not rise from the grave on Saturday, which is the seventh day,
Right.
that the Jewish people still hold in observance as the Lord's Day. But Jesus, on the first day of the week, rose.
Wow.
Now we could say biblically, hey, he said 3 days he would rise again. But, on Sunday, what else does that mean? It's because when he came out of that grave, there was a recreation. No, Jesus did not recreate, it was the recreation of the Christian people, the recreation of a covenant, a recreation of how we are to live. So really, Jesus rising on the first day, Sunday, is that start of getting back to work, you know, but it's that day to mark for us to rest, to celebrate in the resurrection.
Mm. That is so profound. It's so profound, is that there is that recreative element. It's so
Mhm.
beautiful, and I find it so interesting that it came on Sunday,
Yeah.
so it's like this, and it's funny because when he came out of the tomb, he actually, he was telling people like, hey, like, get almost like asking for time. It's like, hey, like, don't touch me yet. Like, let me do my thing. Like, let me just walk around. Like, I don't know. There's a lot of speculation as to what happened maybe during those few hours, but it almost seemed as if it's like he almost wanted to, I don't know, just to teleport and just like go to different people in different places and just
Right.
have these I guess basic conversations. He wasn't, he when he came back, he didn't automatically say, all right, the second coming, like, it's time to get to work and separate the wheat from the chaff. Like, no, he was actually very almost like calm,
Yeah.
like just going around talking to people,
Yeah.
and then he
And
had breakfast and he had the
yeah.
fish. It's like he was taking his sweet time.
Yeah.
Like, he wasn't any rush whatsoever.
I love these points, and I'm just telling you from now, I'm gonna steal those for the next time I speak about leisure, you know?
Take them.
Yeah,
Take
that's
them.
that's great. And we see, I mean, Jesus was working. He did have his leisure time as well. But you're right. I mean, here we are after the resurrection. And I don't know how hard that is, but I'm sure he needed that time, you know.
Absolutely.
And also to teach us leisure.
Yeah.
That rest on the seventh day becomes so important in the Jewish tradition,
Mhm.
and again in the Christian tradition, where we're not supposed to work. We're supposed to take that cue from God to work our, I don't know, our 6 days, but it's important to rest on that seventh day.
As a coach, I very heavily advocate for this. And
Hmm.
I think that what's ended up happening, unfortunately, is that, here, at least in the United States, we have this kind of like this 2-day weekend thing. But what's ended up happening is that that system becomes very fragmented, particularly if you are, like, let's say for example, you're a small business owner, or you work for a large company, and you have a, let's say you have a position of high state or high stature, or you want a corporation, whatever, like that system, it's become warped. But here's the thing: even for people that don't have high stature, because of technology and us being able to receive notifications instantly, and I have this battle with my clients a lot, is that they're afraid that if they don't automatically reply on a Saturday or a Sunday to an email they receive, let's say from a client or a coworker, that they're going to be fired from their jobs. And I think that's very problematic. I mean, I don't think that, I think that there needs to be a separation. Like, if you've paid your dues, to say, quote unquote, and you've worked, like, you need to take that time off. You need it, because then you become resentful and you start hating your job. And I've seen this happen with people. They start to hate their company and they become resentful towards their clients. But it's like, and I've had this battle constantly.
Mm.
But yet they're still afraid. Some of them are still afraid to let it go. Now, the ones that have, they end up finding out usually that it's never as bad as they thought it was, and nobody got fired. Like, nobody got fired for not answering an email on Sunday at 5 p.m. You know what I mean?
Mhm. I unfortunately I'm old enough to remember when email came into play, or the internet. I was about 15 years old,
I miss
and
those days.
yeah, yeah. So I'm real old.
I miss those days of
Yeah,
relative, disconnection, to be honest
right.
with you.
Yeah. And really, I remember parents and other adults and teachers talking about, oh, do you know how much work will get done sooner? They all thought that they were going to start getting more and more time of leisure
Oh my
because
God.
they were just going to be emailing each other stuff.
Oh my God.
I,
Wow.
I remember it for some reason. I remember it,
Well,
but
because it was expediting things.
Mhm.
Because now things could be communicated instantly as opposed to having to hold a 2-hour meeting, for example.
Yeah. And really what it's done, and from your example, it's kind of enslaved us to take the work home now.
What do
You
you
know?
recommend? Like, what should we do with our devices and our stuff on the weekend? Like, how should we go about it?
Yeah. I mean, there's some time, I'm not the type of person that will say we shouldn't be on social media or, things like that. I mean, that's part of our life, which there are some studies that show that we should not be on social media. But I think if we, I talked about taking a nap or being on Netflix and so on, but we have to have a point where everything is in balance.
Mhm.
There's that quote again, to excess of anything, of work or of leisure, or I guess, social media, emails, and so on. That becomes sinful in the Christian tradition.
Right.
And that virtue, that habit of doing good, is being in the middle. So my suggestion is, there was a guy at the talk last time. He says, we joked about making some sort of app, because he genuinely wanted to know, how do we balance this?
What do we
You
balance?
know, how do we balance? So, well, that's the answer, is balance. We have to figure out what's excess, and am I doing too much work over the weekends? Is it taking time away from my family? Am I missing my kids' game? Um, or am I just scrolling for 6 hours? And there are people scrolling for 6 hours.
Oh, I've seen it.
Yeah.
And it's something that honestly it happens almost subconsciously. Like the only thing that will stop you is, oh wait, I'm hungry, like
Mhm.
you'll just keep going.
Yeah.
And I've done it too. I don't think I've ever done it for 6 hours, but
Yeah.
I've seen like, wow, like, you know, where did that hour go?
Right.
You know, like shoot.
Yeah. And it goes quick. I mean, there's now Facebook and Instagram, they allow you to see how many hours a day you're spending on their sites. And people are not realizing they're on it for normal, average people just sitting on the train. They're on it 2.5 hours a day,
Oh yeah.
you know?
My phone tells me that. Everyone's phone tells them now. My iPhone tells me you spent this amount of time, average screen time,
Oh, wow. Okay.
per week.
Yeah.
And it tells you in what categories or what apps you spent it on.
Hmm.
And so now you know. And then we have this joke in the gaming community, because I play a massively multiplayer online game called Final Fantasy 14. And there's this command you can input. It's / playtime. And when you press that, you cringe. You know,
Hmm.
it's like you see / playtime, and then it tells you, 467 days, 15 hours and 2 minutes.
Wow.
And you're like, wow, like I have in-game time of a year and a half of my life.
Yeah.
And I've been playing the game. I started playing this game like seriously, maybe about like 5 or 6 years ago.
Mhm.
So that means that, I was probably away from my keyboard, probably about 20% of that. But still, I spent 1 year of my life like playing this game. Like that's a very, that's a very significant amount of time,
Yeah.
to be doing
Absolutely.
anything really.
Hmm.
So it's like
Absolutely.
when you realize that, you're like, okay, like, I don't regret it. Maybe I regret it a little bit, but I enjoyed my time. So then the follow-up question is, well, if I'm going to play this, how can I make it more purposeful? One. And number two, like, do I need to reassess the balance of my time? You know?
Yeah.
And with addicts, because social media has become an addiction. It's become already defined by many respectable psychologists in the field who have done multiple studies on this with large sample sizes. They have already established the addiction to both the cell phone and by extension also social media. And so the thing with addiction is that we know this from Drugs Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, and Alcoholics Anonymous. It's not just stop. It's stop and replace. You don't just stop smoking cigarettes and do nothing. Like, no, like you stop smoking, but then you replace it with chewing gum, for example. Or
Right.
you replace alcohol with drinking like an effervescent beverage or something of similar taste. Or you have old duels, and you have Heineken, double zero, and you have these drinks that will give you somewhat of a similar taste but without the alcohol in it.
Right.
So then how, like, what would you be able to give us, like, maybe just 3 examples of maybe how you've replaced screen time with other things? I know you've mentioned your niece and nephew, but are there any activities or hobbies that you particularly enjoy to do that have been helpful?
Yeah, just some things, like I said, for leisure, we want to stimulate the minds, you know. So what I did was I took some steps because I was a gamer myself. I don't do it anymore, but I was. And I also enjoyed my social media. And my biggest vice, and even still, is probably YouTube. I watch YouTube videos on basically everything. I'm a pro at everything. But really, what I started to do was I got into biking. What was that, jack of all trades, or whatever, just from YouTube. Yeah, just from YouTube. But anyway, no, I started biking and joined a biking group in Chicago when it's not snowing,
Right.
and
You
we'll
gotta
take
get snow
rides.
tires.
That's too much for me. I'm too big for that. Yeah, I gotta get in shape for that. No, but yeah, there's a good group, and we'll take the trails and so on. But that's helped me build a community. That's helped me build, just my social skills, make some connections. It stimulates my mind because honestly, when I was gaming or watching YouTube or whatever, I wasn't really growing, as a person. I wasn't recreating myself, um, or my future and things like that. Another one that as I've gotten older, I've just really have appreciated family time and seeing my niece and nephews growing up really is just something that's kind of uh, uh, it's pretty emotional, if you will. It's exciting. It's strange to see, wow, my sister has kids, and I'm trying to be a good influence on them or teaching them bad things or whatever. So that's really been recreating me. So I really have started to enjoy that time.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Great. You've got to share now. What games did you play?
Oh, now you guys are gonna laugh at me, but so I stopped around the PlayStation 1
Okay.
time. I have a PlayStation 2 still in the box
You're
because
kidding.
I'm not, it's under my bed, PlayStation 2. And maybe that's worth something now. I don't know, but
Well, if it's an original model, maybe, keep that. Keep that for a couple more
I'll
decades.
I'll keep it.
Yeah, keep it for a couple more decades.
Yeah, I'll do that. And just the funny thing about it is every time I see it and I want to open it up, I don't, because just I knew even back then, if I open this, I'm going to be on that for a long time,
Yeah.
just playing those games. Um, so let me just stick with Mario Brothers and keep it PG, because PlayStation came out with some crazy games, and I was a young man back then. So
Oh yeah, I mean, well,
yeah.
that was right at the onset of. I mean, there were so many revolutionary games because it
Hmm.
was the first. It was, you could consider the PlayStation 1 to be one of the first real 3D consoles that
Yeah.
did it well. You
Yeah.
know, some people argue the Nintendo 64, and there were games that did it quite well. Like there
Hmm.
was Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, which kind of had a good 3D perspective. But on PlayStation, I mean, you had Final Fantasy 7, you had Resident Evil 1 and 2. You had all these games that really, I mean, they took 3D and they made it work.
Yeah.
Like you had Metal Gear Solid get started. Like you had all these, some of these franchises are still alive today.
Oh yeah.
The one I just mentioned, they're all alive. I mean, Final Fantasy, Resident Evil, and Metal Gear, they're all very strong. So, I can understand the allure, because there was this allure to this console, and it broke many records, at the time.
Oh yeah.
So, I definitely understand the battle with the addiction, and something that is something that definitely needs to be taken into consideration. And if it's something that it's become a poison, then you have to advocate, against it. Like, I totally understand that, I totally get it.
But I was up all night playing those games, and that was not good for my college career. So, or high school at that time,
Man.
Yeah.
So I've got to say, and to wrap it up, there's one question I absolutely have to ask. What has been your greatest adventure, and why?
Ooh. My greatest adventure has got to be traveling. I've been in a Chicago bubble for the majority of my life, but traveling around the world, or even different parts of the country, is a sense of adventure, because you're dealing with different types of mentality, different types of food. Just everything is different, especially when you go abroad. So I really have enjoyed that. I've been in some scary situations and so on, but that's good.
No adventure without battle is
That's right.
Yeah, for sure.
That's right.
Well, honestly, Michael, it's been such a pleasure.
Thank you,
What a
same
pleasure
here.
to have you on. Thank you for sharing your experiences, the importance of leisure, the importance of recreation, the importance of having the appreciation for nature, and having that time of silence and prayer and
Definitely.
other things. I mean, you have shared so much gold with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I really just challenge everyone. Just kind of assess where you're at, and think to yourself, where can I make some time where I can really just recreate myself? Because when you do that, when you're struggling or when you're getting burned out, I think a lot of us will be surprised of just a little time of recreation, some little time of leisure. A lot of us will be surprised of how far we're gonna go, you know. And I'm not selling anything, I'm just saying our bodies need this, our souls need this rest,
Yes,
you know.
100%. We can't live without it. We need that.
Yeah, we need it.
Need that. Thank you, Michael, so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.